holy. Coke and white boobies. Fuck the police. These niggas know they know me. 50 for the rollie. Niggas ain't brodies. Hoes got them tripping. Cuffin' like cuff.
All right, Oakland Raiders. Now, I think maybe, Mahomes and the Chiefs is probably like my favorite storyline, as if to see who how successful they are, because I don't think they're going to be successful this first year, but it's just my favorite storyline to see how he performs this year. Thrust it onto the scene. There's no Alex Smith is there if he fucks up, or him and Alex Smith are going at each other this offseason to see who's going to be the quarterback. He is the guy. So that's my favorite thing in this division. I guess also if the Chargers can win the division, if they can be that team that they hadn't been in so long, and then the Broncos, what Case Keenum brings to the table for them. But for the Raiders, there's a lot of good storylines in this league. But for the Raiders, it's to me, it's Gruden and what he can do in this new style NFL. Now, when he was coaching last, the NFL was completely different play style. Just everything was different about it to me. And he's inheriting a pretty good team. This isn't a bad team. Last year this team only won 6 games and really wasn't that year. But the year before they won 12. Derek Carr was awesome. Big storylines, I think. Can Carr and can Gruden mesh? Gruden used to run an old school style offense, a lot of I formations and stuff like that. And Carr has always ran out of the shotgun, so I think that's going to be the first thing. And I don't know what Gruden's planning on doing. I don't know if Gruden's planning on kind of changing his offense, saying, the thing about Gruden, and this is what I'll say about him, is I'm so glad that he's back in football. He should be on sidelines. It's weird hearing him in the booth because he knows so much about the game. He just knows so much, and to me, it just doesn't seem right for someone like him, as intelligent as he is, to be in a booth with Sean McDonough or whatever the fuck his name is, who fucking voice cracks every 3 seconds. And, him having to call this game where he doesn't even seem like he wants to be there type shit. So I'm glad that he's back in NFL. I'm glad he's coaching. I don't know why he didn't coach for as many years as he did. Probably a lot of stress, and he probably made more money just sitting in the broadcast booth anyways. So a lot of change this offseason, a lot of getting rid of people and a lot of bringing people in. And kind of like regime change in a sense here for the Raiders. Now, let's talk about some of the offseason ads and losses that they had. Losses, David Amerson to Kansas City, J.T. Carey to Cleveland. These are cornerbacks. Michael Crabtree went to Baltimore. That's the big wide receiver loss that they had. Janikowski out. They want to going ahead with Trevecchio. I think is a good decision. Janikowski's about on his last leg. Marquette King, a guy I think they should have retained, but not him. Him leaving is not going to be that bad. Now the fact that you're going to have to play him 2 years against Denver every year, that's not fun. Marshall Newhouse, the tackle, is on to Buffalo. They lost their fullback, Olawale, to Dallas. Cordell Patterson is in New England, and then Clive Wofford's a Jet now. So those are their losses. Not a lot of bad losses. The biggest name on there is Crabtree, which they replaced with Jordy Nelson. And I think, there's speculation that Jordy Nelson's not going to be, he's not as fast as he used to be. He's not with Aaron Rodgers anymore. I think he's a good ad for this team. Now, I don't think he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver, and I think he might not even be the number 2 wide receiver because of Martavis Bryant. I think Martavis Bryant's going to be hungry. I think one thing that I will say about John Gruden, and maybe it's something that you're not able to do as much when you're on a team because you're constantly watching your players. You're constantly trying to, make practices, watch film of other teams. So you're trying to figure out what teams are doing, but you're not scouting players in a sense. And I think that was something that Gruden was able to do with his time away from football, is he was able to scout players and find value in players that other people don't see value in. And I think Martavis Bryant is your first good example, because I think Martavis Bryant was in a tough situation. They drafted Juju there at the Steelers, and Juju had become that number 2 guy behind AB. And, Martavis Bryant never really got along with Ben Roethlisberger. So, and Ben Roethlisberger basically runs fucking Pittsburgh. So if he wants him out, he's going to get him out. So I think Gruden did a good job. He gave up, I think, a third round pick, maybe a fourth round pick for Martavis Bryant. He got Martavis Bryant, another guy to add to his receiving core. And I don't think, I think he's the type of guy too to see that the overvalued guy, like the Michael Crabtree, he's a good receiver, but he's an overvalued guy. Like someone's going to pay for him, and he's going to be asking for more than he's valued, and he's going to go and get an undervalued Jordy Nelson. He's going to go and get an undervalued Martavis Bryant. So I think he did a good job with that. Marcus Gilchrist out of Houston, a safety. I think he did good there getting him. Derek Johnson. I know he knows Derek Johnson's not the player that he was, but he understands who Derek Johnson is. He's probably been watching Derek Johnson for 10 years in Kansas City. He's going to be a veteran leader, and he's going to be a good player on this team, I think. Rashard Melvin out of Indianapolis. Keith Smith from Dallas, a fullback. Ryan Switzer, a wide receiver from Dallas, a little slot monster. He doesn't really have a lot of slot talent on this team. I think Ryan Switzer can be a good slot guy. He just didn't really get to play a lot when he was in Dallas because he was behind Beasley, who's another slot guy. Tahir Whitehead from Detroit, I think is probably one of their better ads. Kyle Wilbur from Dallas, and then Daryl Worley from Carolina. So they had a lot of good ads. Doug Martin as well. Doug Martin was another guy that they added from Tampa Bay, and he's going to be splitting time with Marshawn Lynch. We'll see what happens with that. Jared Cook at tight end. And then they have the good offensive line, Osemele, Rodney Hudson. We'll see if Donald Penn comes back. I think he's kind of holding out right now, but he's slated as the guy on the depth chart. And then this team had a pretty good draft. Colton Miller, who they got on the offensive line, a tackle. This is a guy I thought that the Patriots would go after, and the Raiders went ahead and went and grabbed him pretty early. P.J. Hall, a guy out of Sam Houston State. I think this was a really good pick. This is another one of those guys where I think because Gruden's away from the game and able to watch more film and stuff like that, P.J. Hall was a guy that has been outstanding for the last 2 years at Sam Houston State, and he went ahead and went for him in the second round. So I think that was good. And then they went for Brandon Parker, a guy out of North Carolina A&M, who had a pretty good year as an offensive lineman. He's 6'7". Arden Key, who kind of fell in the draft. He was a top 10 type guy at the first of the year, had some injuries to start the year. Arden Key out of LSU, good DN. I think he's going to be good. Nick Nelson out of Wisconsin, a good cornerback. Wisconsin's always got really good defensive players. Maurice Hurst, a guy that fell in the draft class because of a heart issue or something like that, out of Michigan, supposed to be really good defensive tackle. Johnny Townsend, a punter from Florida, pretty good player there. Azim Victor from Washington, I really like this kid. It got him late. And then Marcel Aitman. I think Marcel Aitman can honestly be a good wide receiver on this team too if he gets the opportunity. I think, to me, Marcel Aitman was a top 10, maybe top 15 wide receiver, and he fell to the 7th round. I don't know why. I mean, he's 6'4". He can go up and get the ball. He was overshadowed all year by James Washington and the other wide receivers that they had at Oklahoma State, and I think he's an undervalued player that can be good as well. I like the Raiders going into this year. To me, I mean, and we talk about their defense. Mario Edwards is not bad. Khalil Mack, they still have. P.J. Hall is slated to start. Linebackers, Whitehead and Johnson. Their linebacking situation last year was absolutely terrible. This offseason, a lot of the NFL was talking about how they need to go after a linebacker as one of their first picks, and I kind of agreed, which they didn't really go for a linebacker until late in Azim Victor. And hopefully Azim Victor can be good. Maybe they'll put Arden Key there a little bit. At that outside linebacker position, but I think they did an all right job of trying to get guys at their linebacker position because their linebacker position was just really bad last year. And the secondary, Carl Joseph, who didn't have that bad of a year last year out of West Virginia, Reggie Nelson, a veteran, Garen Conley, and Rashard Melvin are some of the guys in their secondary. I think their secondary is a bit weak, and I think that's going to be an issue. But we'll see what happens. I don't think that this team has that strong of a defense as some of the other teams in this league. A couple of years ago they talked about as the Raiders as being one of the better defensive teams in the league. I think it's probably the worst defensive team in this division now. And they've got an all right offense. I think it's really going to be what Gruden does with this team. Can Gruden put this team over the top? Can his expertise put this team over the top to get them to an 8-8, to a 9-7? The thing is all these teams are going to be about 8-8, 7-9, 9-7. It's just going to be it's going to depend on is if you win these games against your division opponents. If you win the games against the Raiders, if you win games against the Chiefs, the Broncos. Those are the games that are going to really depend, because I think there's going to be a team that's going to be about 6-10. I think there's going to be a team that's like 10-6, a team that's 9-7, and a team that's like 8-8. I think they're all going to be really, really good at the top here. At the same time, though, I could see the Raiders having a bad year if Carr and Gruden can't get on the same page. And I think Gruden needs to kind of the NFL game changes, and if he tries to stay in the same I formation type sets and play action type sets, I think he's going to really get hurt that way. I think he needs to be the one to change the way he thinks, and I think he needs to adapt the new play style, the West Coast shotgun offense. I think he needs to accept that. And I think that's what's best for his team to be successful. I think it would be too hard for them to go back to an I formation type team, because I just think that because of Carr and because of the weapons that he has, I think they have I think they have an all right offensive line, but I don't think it's nothing to write home about. It's good, but it wasn't that good last year. 2 years ago it was really good, and this team was really good. And, last year it was all right, and this team wasn't good at all. So we'll see what happens with this team. But I'm still taking the Chargers to win the division. I think maybe the Raiders can get second. I'm projecting them to get third. I think Chiefs will get second, and I'm thinking Broncos will probably get last. But I could see the Broncos finishing above the Raiders as well. It's gonna be definitely a very, very close division.
Better have my money.
Yeah.
SWAT
Chief 400.
Bitch better have my money. Bitch better have my money.
Bitch better have my money. If the bitch don't, tell her bounce like a